So inshallah we will continue from where we stop in Muqaddimah Hadramiyyah. So in our last lesson, we were at the part where the author speaks about the prohibited timings to perform the recommended prayers. We mentioned any part of it, the prohibited timings where it is not permissible, prohibited basically. In books of fiqh it is mentioned it's makruh, but makruh here means makruh li tahrim. So maybe I explain this first so that we do not become confused when we read any books. It is makruh, to perform prayers at the timings where it is prohibited. But this form of makruh is makruh li tahrim. There is a difference between makruh tanzih and makruh tahrim. So usually when the fuqaha, the scholars in your fiqh, when they say makruh, what they meant is makruh tanzih, unless they specify. They say this is makruh li tahrim, this is any offensive that is prohibited. So there is a difference between makruh tanzih and makruh tahrim. What is the difference? Basically, when we say makruh li tahrim, there is a sin. There is a sin. It is haram. But its prohibition is not the same as the haram. It is something that is prohibited, but this kind of prohibition is not something that is as emphasized as the haram. So it is the second degree of prohibition. So we call it makruh li tahrim. When we say makruh li tanzih, there is no sin, but it is something that is disliked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is basically the difference between makruh tanzih and makruh tahrim. So here the author mentioned it is not permissible, it's prohibited to perform the recommended prayer. Recommended prayer here meaning the sunnah prayers at these 5 timings other than in Makkah. So altogether we have 5 timings, that's what we mentioned in last week. Pertaining to Makkah, it is an exceptional case because there is a specific hadith where the Prophet ﷺ told the Quraysh not to prevent the Muslims from performing any kind of prayers at any part of the day and night. So that is why our scholars mention Makkah is an exception. Other than Makkah, this prohibition in the timings are applied. So the author goes on to speak about the 5 types of prohibition in the timings. So number 1, he say waqtu tulu'i shams hatta tartafi'a qadra rumhin. Number 1 is when the sun rises until the length of a spear. I think I mentioned this also last week, that after sunrise, so the hadith mentioned qadra rumhin, that when the sun rises up to the length of a spear. And the meaning of the length of a spear is basically length of a spear, basically it is about 16 minutes 4 degrees, as what is mentioned by the author of Buriyatul Mustashidin. And 4 degrees, so every degree is 4 minutes, so 4 times 4 you get 16. So if shuruk is at 7 a.m, so by 7:17 you can pray the ishraq prayers. So but within the shuruk prayers, upon the shuruk time, it is prohibited to perform any form of sunnah. So when we mention any prohibited, meaning is haram, there is a sin. If a person prays during this time, the prayer is not valid and he is sinful. This is what we meant. The prayer is not valid and the person is sinful. So this is the first type in your prayer. The second one he mentioned was waqtul istiwa. So waqtul istiwa is when the sun is on top of us, exactly on top of us. There is no shadow to the east or to the west. The shadow is bottom down. So this is waqtul istiwa. So this is also one of the prohibited timing, except for Friday. Again because there is an evidence on the hadith that speaks about the virtue of the Friday prayers, that there is no prohibited timing on that particular day when it comes into the istiwa, because that is the time where it is encouraged for us to engage in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether we are praying or we are reciting the Quran or making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he mentioned illa yawm al-jum'ah hatta tazul. So when it comes into istiwa, until it comes into the time of zawal. So basically before the time of zawal, that is time of zuhur, there will be the time of istiwa. So that is the time that is prohibited for us to pray. But once it enters into zawal, there is no prohibition anymore. So it is just a few seconds actually. Wa waqtul isfirar hatta tarub. And when the sky is yellowish and is slightly before sunset, about 10 minutes before sunset, this is the time when the sky becomes yellowish until the sun is set. So it is not permissible for us to perform any sunnah prayers at this particular time. So it is about 5 to 10 minutes before sunset. So if Maghrib is at 7 p.m., so if it is from 7:50 to 6:50 to 7 o'clock. Wa ba'da salati subhi hatta tatlu', and the next one is after the Fajr prayers. After we pray the Fajr prayers until the sunrise. Until the sunrise. This is pertaining to performance of the prayer. So if a person has not prayed, he can pray, no problem. But if you have prayed your Fajr prayers, then the prohibited times comes in. Likewise, pertaining to Ba'da Salatul Asr, the author mentioned hatta tarub, after performing the Asr prayers. So once you perform Asr prayers, you have entered into the prohibited timing. But as long as you have not performed the Asr prayers, you have not entered into the prohibited timing. So basically the last two what you call it, pertaining to performance of the Fajr prayers and performance of the Asr prayers, this is related to the performance of prayers. Whereas the first three speaks about the timing itself. So number one, we have the ishraq, the shuruq. Number two, we have the istiwa. And then number three, we have the isfirar, the timing before sunset. So these are the three timings that are prohibited for us to perform the sunnah prayers. So this is basically the five timings that is haram for us to perform the sunnah prayers. But of course, in the mother al-Imam Shafi'i, what is not permissible is sunnah prayers whose reason comes after prayers. Sunnah prayers where the reason for praying comes after it is after the prayers. For example, if a person wants to pray the hajat prayers, then it is not permissible. Because why? Because the reason why we pray the hajat prayers is to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for hajah, and that is after prayers. So this is one of the example is the reason of a prayer that comes after prayers. So we have any reason of the prayer that comes before. For example, Tahiyyatul Masjid, you have to enter the masjid, then you perform your prayers. So the reason comes before prayers. So in our mother Imam Shafi'i, for prayers whose reason comes before, you can pray, even in the haram time, even in the prohibited timings. But what is not permissible is if the reason comes after the prayer, after the prayer. So that is why when it comes to Tahiyyatul Masjid, if you go to the masjid, for example, and you are in the haram time, for example, you have prayed your Asr prayers at home, and then you go into the mosque, you want to pray your Maghrib prayers, but you came in early, for example, the Maghrib has not come. So you want to pray the Tahiyyatul Masjid. It is permissible for you to pray Tahiyyatul Masjid. Why? Because Tahiyyatul Masjid, is what I mentioned, the prayer of the reason of the prayer comes before. So this is the thing that is important we have to understand. We have to differentiate between the reason that comes before and the reason that comes after. So what is not permissible is prayers whose reason comes after, not before. This is what the author mentioned. وَلَا يَحْرُمُ مَا لَهُ سَبَبٌ غَيْرُ مُتَأَخِرٍ عَنْهَا كَفَائِتَةٍ. So now the author is going to explain what basically I mentioned earlier, that there are certain exceptions. There are certain prayers that you can perform even in the haram time. Number one, and he say, Malahu sabab ghayra mutaakhir anha kafaita. The reason and is before. Prayers any whose reason is before, not after. So he gave an example, qada prayers. For example, you have not performed your fajr prayers, and then you perform your asr. So after asr, and you remember that today morning you did not perform any fajr prayers. Can you perform any of the fajr prayers qada'an after you perform any of the asr prayers? Yes. Why? Because the reason you are praying is because of qada, and qada in is before. Right? Not is because that you have left not performing the fajr prayers. Due to that, now you are performing any of the prayers. So the reason comes before or after? Before. So it is permissible. So this is what you call it, the first example and he gave. And then he mentioned wakusuf. Wakusuf, yani pertaining any to the eclipse any prayers. For example, the eclipse prayer any occur at 5 p.m. and you have performed any asr any prayers. So now any it is any what you call it, a type any of prayer whose reason comes before. Yani in order for you to pray the eclipse prayer, the eclipse must take place. Correct, no? So it is because of the eclipse you are praying. So the eclipse any comes before. Likewise, and he mentioned was sunnati wudu. And when you take wudu, then sunnah for you to pray. So you pray because of wudu. So which one comes first? Any wudu comes first. Then your prayers. So it is permissible. Wa tahiyatul masjid. This is what I mentioned earlier. Tahiyatul masjid. Only for me to repeat. Wa sajdati tilawa. Sajdati tilawa. Yani for example, yani you are reading the surah sajdah, and you have prayed your asr prayers, and then after yani you get the sajdah, it is a sunnah for you to do the sujood. It is a sunnah for you to do the sujood even though you are in the haram time. Even though you are in the haram time. Anyway, because the reason and it comes before. You read the verse first, then you do the sujood. Not any you sujood and get the verse. So the reason comes. The reason and it comes before. Likewise, any sujood shukr. Sujood any shukr, any when a person and receive ni'mah unbelievably, where the blessing and it comes any immediate, where he is not any expecting any, for example, for 10 years the wife and he has not been pregnant, but suddenly and she is pregnant, for example, like a miracle. Then it's sunnah any for them and to perform the sujood shukr any as a sign of shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or a person is safe any from a tragic accident. The whole passengers and in the bus and he died except any for him. Now it is a sunnah any for this person and to make sujood shukr, because this is a blessing in of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is amazing, or that is what you call it in a state anywhere it is rare that it occurs for example. So then only it is a sunnah for us to do sujood any shukr, even in the timing that is prohibited. Because why? Because the reason comes before the sujood. So that is why it is a sunnah for us to do sujood shukr even we are in the haram time. In lam yaqsid bihi ta'khiraha ilayha liyusalliyaha fiha, with the intention that he does not do it purposely, that he purposely for example does not want to pray the prayer at not in the haram time, but he specifically choose to pray in the haram time. For example, a person for example he what you call it wants to do the tahiyatul masjid, so he prays the asr prayers, and then he purposely wants to pray the tahiyatul masjid in the haram time. If that is his intention, purposely want to do it in the haram time, then it is not permissible. It is not any permissible. Because why? Because the origin and the ruling is that it is not permissible for us to pray in the haram time. But it's just that if the reason comes before. But if a person purposely delay the prayer so that he can pray the prayer at the haram time, then it is not permissible for him. It is not permissible for him to do so. So I hope it is clear, inshallah. And then he mentioned وَيَحْرُمُ مَا لَهَا سَبَبٌ مُتَأَخِرٌ عَنْهَا كَصَلَاةِ الْإِسْتِخَارَةِ وَرَكْعَتَيْ الْإِحْرَامِ. Now he given the example of prayers that the reason comes after. So he gave the reason like one, like Salatul Istikhara. Salatul Istikhara, you pray, then you make dua. Correct, no? Just like Salatul Hajjah. You pray, then you make dua. So the reason comes after. So this type of prayer you cannot perform in the prohibited timings at all costs. And likewise, the sunnah of ihram, because the sunnah of ihram, you pray first, then you do the ihram, correct? No? So the reason comes after. The reason comes after. So you cannot pray in the haram time. You cannot pray the sunnatul ihram in the haram time. So usually, when we want to do ihram and do it, we do perform our prayers, in the correct timing, and you do not want to perform the prayers after you perform the asar prayers, for example, because you have entered into the prohibited time. So you cannot perform the sunnatul ihram. Maybe there are people might not know this or overlook. So this is the thing that we have to be careful, because it is sinful. So before we enter ihram and we have committed a sin, this is the thing that we do not want. That we do not want to do. So after the author speaks about the timings and the prohibited timings, he goes on to speak about the adhan. So he said, faslun yustahabbul adhan wal iqamatu lil maktubati in lam yasilha bifa'itatin. So he said it is a sunnah, mustahab. Mustahab here meaning sunnah, to do the adhan and iqamah, for the maktuba. Maktuba here refers to the 5 times obligatory prayers. The Fajr prayers, Zohar prayers, Asr prayers, Maghrib prayers, Isha prayers. So it is a sunnah for us to do adhan and iqamah, even though we are praying alone. Not necessarily that we are praying in jama'ah. If you are at home alone, for example, before you pray your Zohar prayers, for example, do adhan and do your iqamah. But it is not necessary that you raise your voice if there is nobody in the house. So you just raise your voice for you to hear. And this is important, especially in our houses. In our houses, always make it a habit to do adhan for every waqt. For every waqt. And we have to teach our children how to do adhan. Muslim houses must do adhan. So do not just pray just Allahu Akbar no adhan, no iqamah. We should not perform our prayers like that. So we have to give importance on adhan and iqamah, especially today. Our houses, a lot of people are complaining there's jinn, or there is all these things inside in the house, and there's a lot of arguments and all these things. Bringing adhan and iqamah to the house is barakah. So that is why we have to make sure that if there are people in the house, that we do adhan and iqamah. We do adhan and iqamah for every waqt, for every prayer timing, inshaAllah ta'ala. And this is a sunnah. Then he mentioned, in lam yasilha bifa'itatin, unless if a person for example does the 5 times daily prayer, and then he wants to do the qada. So one adhan is enough. One adhan is enough. لِرَجُلِ وَلَا مُنْفَرِدًا وَلَوْ سَمِعَ الْأَذَانِ. Even he is a person, munfarid, one person. That's what I mentioned earlier. And even he has heard adhan. For example, you are on your way back to your house, you have heard the adhan from the masjid. And then when you are in your house, you are praying alone, because you don't have time to go to the mosque, for example, the prayer finished already. And then you want to pray your Zohar prayers, for example, at 3 p.m. But earlier you have heard the adhan. It is still a sunnah for you to do adhan again. It is still a sunnah, to do the adhan again, when you are praying by your own. Wali jama'atin saniyah. And likewise, when a person is doing the second congregation. The second congregation. For example, a person has prayed in a in a particular place, for example. And he has prayed his Zuhur prayers, for example. And then he goes into his workplace, and then he finds that there is a jama'ah who's going to pray Zuhur. It is a sunnah for him to pray again. So this second prayer is a sunnah for him. Or it is still a sunnah for them to do the adhan. And likewise pertaining to the qada prayers, the fa'ita or the i'ada prayers. That if you are praying qada, it is a sunnah for you to do the to do the adhan. And then he mentioned, فَإِنِ اجْتَمَعَ فَوَائِتُ أَوْ جَمْعَ تَقْدِيمًا أَوْ تَأْخِيرًا أَذَّنَ لِلْأُولَى وَحْدَهَا. If he is praying any a few qada, for example, he's going to pray subuh qada, zuhur qada, asr qada. So he only does one adhan. He only does one adhan. Likewise, when a person does the jama' taqdeem and jama' ta'khir, and when he's traveling, so he only does one adhan, but he's praying two prayers, correct? No? You are praying zuhur and asr, whether you are praying taqdeem or ta'khir, whether you are bringing the prayers to the first timing or the second timing, it is a sunnah for you to only do one adhan, but two iqamah. One adhan, two iqamah. Wa yustahabbu al-iqamatu wahdaha lil mar'ah. Pertaining to woman, it is only a sunnah for them to do the iqamah and not the adhan, not the adhan. So for women, they only do iqamah to such that their voice cannot be heard by the ajnabi, the male of non-mahram. Wa an yuqala fi salati al-masnuna jama'atan ghayr al-janazati as-salatu jami'ah. Pertaining to the sunnah prayers, like in prayers, for example, Idul Fitri, Idul Adha. So we do not have adhan for Idul Fitri prayers, Idul Adha prayers, but we say as-salatul jami'ah. Usually we say Salatul Idul Fitri jami'atan rahimakumullah. The prayer of Idul Fitri in congregation is going to be is commencing. May Allah have mercy upon all of you. So this is just like what you call al-i'lam, to inform many people that we are going to perform the Eid prayers, whether Idul Fitri or Idul Adha. So we say as-salatu jami'ah. Likewise, pertaining to Tarawih prayers, Salatu Tarawih jami'atan rahimakumullah. So we do not have any adhan for the sunnah prayers, but we have this as-salatul jami'ah. This what you call it, saying where the congregation is going to take place. Wa shartu sihatil adhan al-waqtu ila subhi. Ila subhan. And the condition of the validity of the adhan is that it must enter into the timing. For example, if you want to pray the Zohar prayers, you must make sure that the time of Zohar has come. Then you adhan. Asr prayers, likewise. Illa subh. The author mentioned except for Fajr, because during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet instructed Bilal radiallahu an to do the adhan before Fajr. Before Fajr, doing Fajr Kadib. This is to alert the people that the time of prayer is coming. The time of Fajr is coming. Only for Fajr prayers. Only for what you call it? Only for Fajr prayers, it is permissible that we do the adhan before the prayer. Before the prayer. وَيَجُوزُ بَعْدَ نِصْفِ اللَّيْلِ. And likewise, after midnight. After midnight is permissible that the person does the adhan for the Fajr prayers. وَإِلَّا الْأَوَّلِ min yaumil jum'ah. Min yaumil jum'ah. Pertaining to Friday. Pertaining to Friday, what you call it, the first adhan is done at the time of Zohar. The first adhan is done at the time of Zohar, and the second adhan is when the imam has gone up the mimbar, when the khatib has gone up the mimbar. Why the author is mentioning this? Because during the time of Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu an, there is only one adhan. During the time of Sayyidina Uthman, there is only one adhan. So when the time of Zohar comes in the time of Zawal, the muadhin will do adhan, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam straight away he will go up the mimbar. So Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan during his time, because there are many Muslims in Medina, so what he did was he does two adhan. He does two adhan. So the first adhan is an adhan to inform the people that the timing of prayer has come. That the timing of prayer has come. And then the second adhan is the adhan of the azan of the Jumu'ah. So when comes to Jumu'ah prayers, we have two adhan. When comes to Jumu'ah prayers, we have two adhan. طيب. And then he mentioned وَتَرْتِيب وَالْمُوَالَةِ. It is a sunnah that we follow the sequence. That we follow the sequence. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, and so on and so forth. So there is a sequence to the adhan. And there must also be muwala. It must be continuous. It must be continuous. If it is not continuous, then he has to restart again. It has to restart again. Wa kaunuhu min wahidin, and the adhan is done by one person, not many. Done by one person in the Arabic language, bil Arabiyyah, in kana thamma yuhsinuha wa alayhi an yata'allam. So as long as there are people who are able to recite the adhan in Arabic, then they have to recite the adhan in Arabic. If not, they have to learn how to recite the adhan in the Arabic language. Wa shartuhuma isma'u ba'dil jama'ati wa isma'u nafsihi in kana munfaridan. The condition of the adhan and iqamah, that it must be heard by the jama'ah. If you are praying in jama'ah, for example 10 people, then we raise our voice for 10 people. We raise our voice for 10 people. But of course this is different when it comes into the masjid. If we are praying at home, for example, so in the household, for example, there are 10 people, so we raise our voice so that the people in the house can hear. Likewise when it comes to the iqamah. But if we are praying alone, then we don't have to raise our voice. We just raise our voice to such an extent that we can hear our voice. In kana munfaridan, this is what he meant if a person is alone. Wa shartul mu'adhin al-islam wa tamyiz wa dhukura. So the condition of the mu'adhin, the one who gives the adhan, he must be a Muslim. So adhan from non-Muslim is not valid. And minimum it must be tamyiz, mumayyiz. Mumayyiz is about 7 years old. That a boy must be about 7 years old. So adhan from sabi is not counted. For example, an infant 3 years old, 4 years old, even 5 years old, and it is not any permissible. And one of the conditions also, it must be a male, zukura, not female. So Islam, tamyiz, and being a male. Wa yukrahu tamtid, and it is makruh that we lengthen the adhan too much. Lengthening of the adhan, what you call it, at a length that is weird kind of lengthening. Like some people when they do adhan, the adhan with a very awkward form of lengthening. So all these things we have to avoid. We have to follow the rules of tajweed. Follow the rules of tajweed. Wal kalamul yasir fi, and this is makruh, to speak while doing the adhan. Wa tarku ijabatihi, and not answering the adhan is also makruh. So inshallah I think we will stop here because of time. Hopefully we have covered what you call it much today. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with tawfiq and hidayah. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali sayyidina Muhammad. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين.